Tony Beets versus Parker Schnabel. What started as a simple rivalry for Yukon ground has turned into a $100 million mystery. Discovery never wanted you to see. Secret flights, vanished footage, and gold so pure it defies explanation. This is the story that crossed the line between competition and conspiracy. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear isn't another gold rush season. It's the buried truth about what really happened off-camera. It began quietly. No shouting, no broken machines, just a strange tension settling over the Yukon. Parker Schnabel's crew was digging closer to the invisible line separating his claim from Tony Beets. Both knew that line wasn't just dirt. It was money, pride, and legacy. Tony's massive dredge sat idle, rumors swirling that he'd found something bigger. An old geological report pointing to a hidden formation worth tens of millions. Then, suddenly, he disappeared from sight. Then came the drone footage, a clip uploaded anonymously, barely a minute long. It showed both operations, Parker's cut and Tony's tailings, less than 300 meters apart. The overlap was unmistakable. Within hours, Discovery's PR department called it a coincidence of camera angles. But viewers weren't buying it. 2 days later, both crews vanished from the live feeds, production halted, and a blackout spread across the Yukon set. For fans, that was the moment everything changed. Something had gone wrong behind the cameras, something no one was supposed to see. Days later, a Yukon geologist uploaded a single image to a mining forum. A gold-rich core sample labeled Zone B. He claimed it was tied to both Schnabel and Beets. What set the internet on fire wasn't the sample. It was the signature stamped on the side. Tony Beets, dated 2018. Years before Parker's current expansion. The photo was deleted within minutes, but screenshots spread like wildfire. When reporters asked Parker about it, he didn't deny the overlap, but he called Tony's documentation forged nostalgia, a desperate grab at relevance. He claimed his GPS data proved his claim lines were clean. But then something strange arrived at his camp, a set of unmarked crates hauled in by a freight truck under a false company name. The shipping label traced back to Anchorage. Destination, equipment testing, Yukon Sector 5. Inside, according to a crew member who later quit, were new core drills and a series of sealed rock cylinders. That same night, Tony's camp lights flared across the valley. An excavator was running, digging well past midnight. The final frames from a production drone show the lights sweeping Parker's Ridge before the feed cuts to static. The next morning, Discovery called it a signal error. Nobody believed that either. What happened after would ripple across every mining channel on the internet. Monica Beets, Tony's daughter, posted what looked like an innocent clip from camp. Her father standing beside the dredge, joking about maintenance. But sharp-eyed fans noticed something wrong. The landscape behind him didn't match the dredge's usual position. Analysts compared satellite shots and confirmed it. Tony's dredge had been moved, over 200 meters beyond his legal claim. Within hours, Discovery issued takedown notices for every re-upload of Monica's clip. The more they tried to erase it, the more people shared it. Reddit threads exploded with theories. Was Tony secretly mining off the books? Had he found something that forced the network to bury the evidence? Then came the real shocker. A production insider speaking under anonymity confirmed the dredge wasn't supposed to run this season at all. He said Discovery had ordered it mothballed. Budget cuts, too expensive to film, too old to move. And yet, there it was. Freshly dredged tailings glinting in the Yukon sun, caught in a clip that should never have aired. That was the moment fans realized this wasn't just another season. Something was happening off camera, something big enough to shut down filming, rewrite contracts, and pit two of the biggest names in modern gold mining against each other, in a silent war no one was supposed to witness. Parker noticed it too. If Tony's dredge had been running off-record, there had to be a reason, and he intended to find it. When his drone surveyor scanned the valley for thermal anomalies, the answer appeared where no one expected. Beneath the permafrost, a faint orange vein glowed like a living artery, cutting straight through both claims. At first, they thought it was a glitch, residual heat, buried drums, but the data didn't lie. The vein was real, rich, and alive. When Parker enhanced the imagery, the shape emerged clearly. A quartz formation running directly under the legal boundary, before vanishing beneath Tony Beets' pit. If the readings were accurate, that single stretch could yield more gold than either man had pulled in a decade. He called a private meeting with his survey team and geologist, trying to figure out what the hell he was looking at. The answer came from an unexpected place, an old mining registrar in Whitehorse who remembered when those same coordinates used to belong to a government lease, back before the mid-70s privatization wave. Back then, the entire sector had been one massive block of federal land leased to multiple prospectors, under the condition that if any overlap or dual claiming ever occurred, ownership reverted back to the state. The clause had never been repealed. The problem was, both Parker's and Tony's operations now sat directly on that overlap. If the government ever found out, both men could lose everything. Tony got wind of the discovery within days. A shared supplier accidentally mentioned to one of his foremen that Parker's team was mapping old federal plots. Tony knew exactly what that meant. He didn't bother confronting Parker. He didn't need to. Instead, he quietly ordered his dredge crew to keep the pumps running 24/7. Whatever lay beneath that ground, he was going to pull it out first. Cameras captured none of it. Even the network's production feeds were restricted. But locals in Dawson began to notice truck convoys heading toward the old military airstrip. One gray morning, without any public notice, a C-17 cargo plane touched down at the edge of town. It wasn't on any published flight manifest, and the pilots refused to talk. Witnesses filmed large sealed crates being rolled from Tony's supply trucks straight into the aircraft's belly. The crates were marked only with yellow industrial labels and hazard stripes. When asked, Tony brushed it off as routine equipment transport. Nothing to see, just parts and maintenance gear for the dredge. But then the story broke. A single shipping manifest leaked online. It listed the contents as assay analysis equipment, bound for a private refinery address in Anchorage, registered under an Alaskan company that had officially dissolved 3 years earlier. The registration agent's name was redacted. Within hours, the post was deleted, but not before screenshots flooded every Gold Rush forum. Viewers started connecting dots: the hidden dredge, the mysterious crates, the vein that crossed both claims. It didn't take long for Parker to realize Tony was moving faster than anyone expected. That very night, his own camp lights flared to life. His crew started working in shifts through the cold. No cameras, no discovery schedule. If Tony was pulling gold from their shared boundary, Parker was going to beat him to it. The rivalry that had once been played up for ratings was no longer entertainment. It was a silent arms race. Neither man could afford to lose, and neither could afford exposure. The network stayed completely silent. Then, out of nowhere, a single image appeared online, posted by a Discovery sound technician. It showed Tony Beets and Parker Schnabel underground, helmets on, shaking hands in front of a rock wall studded with raw quartz. The photo was blurred, badly lit, but the implications were explosive. The location didn't match any known filming site, and neither miner had filmed joint scenes in months. Within 24 hours, the photo vanished, and the technician's account disappeared with it. Discovery claimed no involvement, but fans weren't buying it. Theories erupted. Some said they'd found a hidden vein too massive to publicize. Others claimed they'd been forced into a secret partnership by the network to keep the show alive. But the story twisted again when a separate email leak hit mining forums just days later. This time, the source was anonymous, but the metadata traced back to Tony's headquarters. The emails revealed internal communication between Tony's crew leads, referring to Parker not as a partner, but as a hostile control variable. That phrase sent shockwaves through the community. It suggested that whatever the two had found underground wasn't a shared discovery. It was an experiment, maybe even a test dig under controlled secrecy. Why would Tony label Parker that way unless something larger was being orchestrated? By the time the news reached the Yukon, both miners had gone completely silent. No interviews, no social media posts, no updates from Discovery. Even local officials claimed they hadn't seen the crews for days, but pilots flying over the valley swore they saw lights still burning through the night. Flood lamps and heavy machinery carving deeper into the ice. Two rival operations digging toward the same invisible heart of gold that neither of them might legally own. Parker had seen the same thing on his drone feed, tracks that weren't his, equipment signatures that didn't match his inventory. For weeks he waited, hoping Discovery or the Yukon board would intervene, but nothing came. The silence started to feel deliberate, like someone was protecting Tony's off-record dig. That's when his patience finally broke. He filed an injunction, quietly, no press, no statement, to block Tony Beets from operating any equipment within 500 meters of Claim B. It was a surgical legal move, one that didn't require a camera crew or a televised feud. But word spread fast through Dawson. Parker had gone to court. Tony's reaction was immediate and predictable. Within 48 hours, a new outfit rolled onto the Beets property. Fresh faces, no Discovery badges, hauling brand-new Komatsu rigs. Their claim paperwork was filed under a new company name, Nordic Earthworks Limited, registered to 1V. Beets, Tony's cousin, out of Whitehorse. On paper, it was a different operation entirely. In reality, it was the same crew wearing different jackets. By the end of the week, satellite imagery showed two excavations blooming on opposite sides of the same ridge. From above, they looked like twin wounds carved into the earth, each one mirroring the other, moving closer, day by day, toward the invisible boundary that had already ruined half the Yukon's peace. Parker's cut was clean and geometric, precision-engineered by survey drones. Tony's was chaotic, wide and brutal, the ground itself smoking from the dredge exhaust. Neither side cared about rules anymore. The gold vein that neither man officially owned had become their private war. Locals started complaining about the noise, the vibration, the constant floodlights tearing through the night. Then came the drone footage. One of Tony's excavators tearing through a section of frozen riverbank, the same area Parker's environmental permits explicitly protected. That was enough to bring in the Yukon authorities. Within days, a full environmental review was launched. Trucks were stopped, filming halted, and Discovery issued an emergency notice. Production suspended indefinitely pending compliance. On television, the announcement came as a cheerful mid-season format change, an excuse to splice old footage and unseen clips while operations paused for safety. But on the ground, the valley went dark, and for the first time in years, no one was supposed to be digging. Except Parker's foreman didn't stop. He told his crew they were just draining the standing water left by the thaw, a routine cleanup. But the operation never looked routine. Under floodlights muffled by fog, they began cutting deeper, probing beneath the silt, where the ground refused to freeze. The excavator hit something solid, a clunk of metal against timber. When they cleared it, they found a reinforced shaft descending into darkness. The beams were hand-cut, blackened with age, and lined with iron plates stamped with the code BB77. It didn't take long for Parker to realize what that meant. BB stood for Beets Brothers, one of Tony's earliest exploration partnerships from the late 1990s, a test drift he'd supposedly abandoned decades ago. Curiosity overrode caution. Parker ordered the shaft opened and sent a small camera rig down. The footage showed rows of barrels sealed with industrial wax, stacked neatly along the tunnel walls. Each was labeled in fading red letters, Core Section C. When they cracked one open, the air that escaped smelled like iron and oil. Inside was dense black sand, threaded with visible flakes of gold. Unnatural in concentration, almost metallic in hue. They sent samples to a private lab in Whitehorse. The assay report came back the next morning. Purity levels exceeding anything naturally occurring in Yukon sediment. This wasn't placer gold. It was refined, stored deliberately. Parker didn't tell Discovery. He didn't tell his lawyer. He only shared the footage with 2 trusted crew members, and they swore silence. But someone else was already watching. 3 nights later, motion sensors at the site recorded movement, figures near the shaft entrance. The next morning, the barrels were gone. All that remained were deep boot prints in the frost, and a single half-burned folder lying in the mud. The cover read, Section 9. No one knew where it came from until a week later, when an ex-producer from Discovery posted anonymously online. He claimed he'd worked on an early version of the Beets Schnabel crossover season that was canceled before filming began. Attached was a zippy folder containing hundreds of internal files, budgets, emails, scripts, but one document stood out, Section 9. It was a proposal dated 2 years before the current season aired. The file included joint financial projections signed by both Parker Schnabel and Tony Beets, outlining plans to co-develop a new dredge operation estimated to generate over $100 million in gold yield within 5 years. The report described it as a cooperative test initiative under controlled broadcast. Discovery executives, the producer claimed, scrapped it after deciding that turning rivals into partners would destroy the core narrative tension of the franchise. Instead, they allegedly ordered production to steer both miners back into separate storylines. But if the paperwork was real and every signature matched, then the supposed feud, the injunctions, even the secret operations, might have been the fallout of a deal that both men had already made. Suddenly, the entire rivalry looked like theater masking something far larger. Fans who dug through the leaked files noticed buried references to controlled sampling, limited broadcast assets, and federal coordination. Some believed the Section 9 project wasn't about a dredge at all, but about testing the recovery potential of buried pre-federal gold caches, gold that technically didn't belong to either miner or the network. The wording was vague enough to hide behind entertainment contracts, but the dollar figures weren't. Over $100 million in projected value, divided 50-50 between 2 men who, according to the show's timeline, weren't even speaking that year. And if that partnership ever existed, then everything since, the quiet court filings, the mysterious shipments, the midnight digs, wasn't rivalry. It was cleanup, a silent operation to recover something both men had once agreed to share until it grew too valuable to control. The discovery of the BB-77 shaft wasn't an accident. It was a remnant of an old deal reawakening beneath the Yukon ice, dragging both Tony Beets and Parker Schnabel into a secret that could unravel everything the cameras had ever sold as real. That secret left paper trails, contracts, side agreements, unfiled drafts that no one was supposed to find. But when Parker's lawyer referenced a massive filing in Dawson's registry, investigators started digging, and the trail led somewhere no one expected. The arbitration documents were never meant to see daylight. When Parker's lawyer first mentioned the filing, Yukon's legal circles lit up, but within hours, the number vanished from every public database. Digging deeper, an investigative blog traced it to a private arbitration firm in downtown Vancouver. known for settling disputes between oil conglomerates and foreign states. Their client list was sealed, but security footage from a nearby hotel showed Tony Beets entering at 9:42 a.m., carrying a thick red folder, followed by Parker at 12:13 p.m., alone, no legal team, no camera crew. That night, Discovery's headquarters received a notice labeled Non-Disclosure Binding under Commercial Arbitration Clause 14C. It effectively silenced both parties from discussing anything involving dual-asset discovery under lease convergence. In simpler terms, they'd found something that belonged to neither of them, and both. 2 days later, Discovery's senior programming executive, the one who had greenlit Gold Rush's last 5 seasons, quietly sold $3 million worth of company stock. No explanation, no statement, just a clean break. Insiders whispered she'd been advised to exit early. When a reporter confronted Parker weeks later about the supposed lawsuit, he didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He simply said, "There was no lawsuit, just truth we couldn't show." That line spread like wildfire. What truth? What couldn't they show? Then came the audit. A whistleblower from the Yukon Finance Department leaked a confidential banking dossier. 200 pages of coded wire logs, transport manifests, and refinery certificates. The total value of unreported gold transactions, $97.8 million. Every ounce traced back to refineries in Switzerland and Dubai, and each shipment matched the assay data from the legendary Core Section C barrels. Gold of purity so high it defied normal sedimentary composition, as if refined before discovery. Even stranger, the first of these transfers occurred within days of the production hiatus, when both Parker and Tony's crews supposedly shut down for equipment maintenance. For 3 weeks, nothing aired, nothing filmed, and when the show resumed, Discovery labeled the missing episodes as lost due to data corruption. But metadata embedded in the file archives later revealed something else. The original footage had been manually overwritten at network level. Satellite telemetry added another layer of intrigue. Mining GPS pings from both claims during that blackout period showed synchronized excavation, Parker's and Tony's coordinates running parallel less than 80 meters apart beneath the frost line. Whatever they were digging for, they were doing it together and doing it in silence. By the time the Yukon audit went public, the network scrambled to contain it. Discovery issued a statement claiming the offshore transfers were simulation funds used for dramatization, but the Yukon auditor, speaking anonymously, confirmed the opposite. Those shipments were real. They left this territory unregistered, and whoever moved them knew exactly what they were doing. Then, out of nowhere, Tony and Parker returned. No film crew, no network branding. Just a short, grainy clip uploaded to an unverified YouTube channel under the name Auric Line Footage. The video showed them standing by the riverbank at dawn, the same place where both their operations had begun years ago. The camera panned shakily, as if handheld. Parker's voice cut through the static. "We both crossed the same line," he said quietly, "and it wasn't drawn in dirt." Tony nodded, eyes fixed on the water. "What we found wasn't just gold, it was buried history." Then, a flicker. The video ended mid-frame before they could say more. It should have been nothing, another fan hoax, but metadata analysis revealed the clip originated from a device registered to Discovery's own internal network. The same IP range used during the missing weeks of filming. Within 24 hours, all re-uploads of the video were DMCA struck by Discovery's legal team. Every mirror, every backup, gone. But the file's title remained etched across forums and news threads. Section 9, Raw Cut. Days later, a new company filing appeared in Alaska's corporate registry. The name, Section 9 Ventures, LLC. The listed officers, T. Beets and P. Schnabel. The company's stated purpose, exploration and recovery of historically registered extraction assets. No network, no sponsors, just two names, bound by silence and gold. Rumors swirled that the buried history they referred to wasn't geological at all. According to a former Beets crew member, the shaft beneath the timber chamber didn't end where they thought it did. Below the iron plates marked BB77 was a second layer, reinforced concrete, poured decades ago, stamped with a Canadian military seal from 1952. The same year, Cold War operations used Yukon ground for classified storage. That was the real reason the arbitration never reached court. The government still held claim to whatever was buried below federal strata lines. Gold that old, that pure. It wasn't raw ore. It was refined reserve, the kind used in wartime banking, meant to vanish from history. By then, Discovery had scrubbed every reference to Core Section C from its archives. Crew members were reassigned or terminated. Contracts were rewritten with stricter NDAs. Yet, the legend only grew. Local pilots reported unmarked cargo planes flying low over the old Dawson runway at night. A mining drone hobbyist captured thermal readings of machinery operating underground long after both operations supposedly shut down. And on one frozen morning, weeks after Section 9 Ventures Incorporated, a small group of prospectors hiking near the Klondike found a piece of stamped metal protruding from the ice, coated in sediment, marked faintly with letters, S9V. It wasn't gold, but it was proof that something far larger had begun. Something no one was supposed to find, let alone film. Whatever Parker and Tony uncovered beneath that ridge, it didn't end with a feud. It ended with an alliance, one buried as deep as the Yukon itself.